This whole mess started back in middle school, where I met this girl who would later become both a close friend and the center of this whole situation. We were those typical friends who would playfully flirt but never cross any lines. You know the type. The friendship where everyone around you thinks there's something more going on, but there really isn't. Though I'll admit there were days I wished things had gone differently. Life took us in different directions when I moved away during sophomore year of high school. Fast forward to a few months ago when I randomly bumped into her at the local big box store. It felt like old times as we caught up and we exchanged numbers to keep in touch. That's when I learned she was dating this guy who worked at my old workplace. A real piece of work, as I'd soon find out. My brother, who still worked there, came to me with some disturbing news. This guy had been bragging about using my friend for a place to stay and showed my brother some private pictures of her that should never have been shared. The moment I saw those pictures my brother forwarded to me, my blood started boiling. I immediately called her and told her to come over right away, explaining that we needed to talk about something important. When she arrived at my house about 45 minutes later, she could tell something was wrong. She asked me what happened, noting how angry I looked. I showed her the pictures and explained how her boyfriend worked with my brother and had been showing these pictures around while bragging about using her for a place to stay. Let me tell you, my friend is not someone you want to mess with when she's angry. She immediately called him and spent nearly an hour yelling at him, calling him out for being a lying, manipulative person, and berating him for sharing those private pictures. But I wasn't done yet. I knew the store he worked at had high-definition security cameras everywhere due to previous robberies. I called my old boss and reported that one of her employees was showing inappropriate pictures to other workers and possibly customers. The boss reviewed the footage and caught him not only showing the pictures, but doing other inappropriate things during his shifts. He got hit with a 3-week suspension and a massive write-up. But that wasn't even the worst of it. The state was already investigating him for missing scratch tickets worth over $300. They added unlawful distribution of inappropriate content to his charges. After a few days of thinking, my friend ended things with him. That's when he started making threats against her. Now this is where my dad comes in. He owns a local transport company, and everyone there knows and loves my friend. They were actually planning to offer her a job. The guy called for his usual weekend cab to my friend's place, not knowing what was coming. I picked him up in the cab and made an excuse about needing to stop by the station to get my phone. When we arrived, I told him there was a malfunction with the cab and asked him to wait inside while we fixed it. He walked in and saw my friend sitting at my desk, where I'd left some roses with a love you card. They were actually for my grandmother who was returning from South America. He completely lost it. The guy lunged at my friend and grabbed her by the neck. Big mistake. My dad, who's built like a professional wrestler, had him pinned to the floor in seconds. Another driver we call the Godfather dragged him outside and tied him to a pole right next to the sprinkler system. I turned it on full blast and left him there until the police arrived. Here's where it gets even better. He got released on bond and had a court date during a massive thunderstorm. He called our cab company again for a ride. Not the smartest move. The driver took extra precautions due to the flooded roads and heavy fog, making him 45 minutes late to his hearing. The judge wasn't pleased. He got charged with assault, trespassing, and they found illegal substances on him. He tried to blame me for everything, but when that didn't work, he took a deal. 5 years instead of 10 if he revealed his dealer. He got placed in a cell with someone known for teaching abusers harsh lessons. According to my friend, who works as a guard, he spent his first 2 weeks in the hospital. Now he's stuck with all the worst jobs in the yard, and nobody will help him when it's supposed to be a two-person task. Word spreads fast in prison, and last I heard, he's become the facility's least popular resident, and he's got 4.5 more years to think about his choices. I work as a security officer at one of the biggest malls in our city. I've been doing this job for about 3 years now, handling everything from shoplifters to lost children. While I've seen my fair share of troublemakers during my shifts, nothing quite prepared me for what happened last Saturday. I was doing my regular patrol around the second floor, checking in with store owners and making sure everything was running smoothly. Around 2 p.m., I noticed a small crowd gathering near one of the clothing stores. Usually, when people start clustering like that, it means trouble, so I made my way over to check things out. What I witnessed next made my blood boil. In the middle of the crowd was this woman, let's call her Karen, with 3 kids who looked between 8 and 12 years old. From the expensive bags they were carrying and their clothes, you could tell they had money. They were harassing a young woman who was clearly blind, evident from her white cane and the way she was trying to navigate through the space. I heard Karen yelling at the blind woman, accusing her of bumping into her children. The blind woman tried to apologize, but Karen wouldn't hear it. She kept going on about how expensive their clothes were and how the blind woman could have made her kids fall. Her voice was getting louder with each word, drawing even more attention from nearby shoppers. The blind woman was visibly distressed, clutching her cane tighter. Her hands were shaking and you could see she was trying her best to remain calm despite the horrible situation. Before I could intervene, Karen's behavior escalated. She started talking about how her youngest child had been wanting a walking stick to play with, and then had the audacity to say that the glasses would look better on her daughter. The blind woman tried to protest, explaining that she needed her things but couldn't even finish her sentence. Before she could get the words out, Karen actually grabbed the glasses right off her face and snatched the cane from her hands. The blind woman lost her balance and fell to the ground, while Karen's kids laughed and pointed at her. Some people in the crowd gasped in shock, while others pulled out their phones to record the incident. I was already reaching for my radio when something unexpected happened. Out of nowhere, this young man came charging through the crowd. Without any warning, he executed a perfect sidekick that caught Karen right in her ribs, sending her sprawling to the floor. In one fluid motion, he recovered the glasses from Karen's face and took back the cane from her kid, who was waving it around like a toy sword. The crowd fell silent, stunned by this sudden turn of events. The young man then threatened Karen, warning her that if she ever touched his sister again, a kick would be the least of her worries. His voice was ice cold, and even I felt a chill run down my spine. He helped the blind woman up, and that's when it clicked. They must have separated briefly while shopping, and Karen saw an opportunity to take advantage of the situation. The young man put the glasses back on his sister's face and handed her the cane, all while keeping his eyes locked on Karen, who was still whimpering on the floor and clutching her side. By this point, my colleague had arrived as backup, and we detained Karen while waiting for the police. Her kids were crying now, but not because they felt bad about what happened. They were upset that they couldn't keep the toys they'd stolen. The oldest one was even demanding that we arrest the young man for hurting their mother. The police arrived within minutes. After reviewing the mall security footage and taking statements from multiple witnesses, they arrested Karen for assault and attempted robbery. The blind woman was still shaking, but her brother kept her close, whispering reassurances. I could see her gradually calming down as he spoke to her. They declined medical attention, but agreed to give statements to the police. When they walked away, I overheard the brother suggesting that maybe they should stick to online shopping for a while, trying to lighten the mood despite the awful situation they'd just been through. Karen spent the rest of her afternoon in the back of a police car, screaming about how she was going to sue everyone. The mall, the young man, even me for some reason. She kept insisting that she was the real victim here and that the blind woman should have been more careful. Last I heard, she's facing multiple charges and has been banned from every mall in the city. The video of the incident went viral on social media, and people are calling her the blind robbing banshee. Some of the witnesses who recorded the incident shared their videos with local news stations, making sure everyone knew exactly what kind of person she was. I've been in retail management for over 2 decades, and I've seen my fair share of workplace drama. But this story about my former co-worker takes the cake for being the most two-faced person I've ever met. I started as a frozen food department manager at a large supermarket. One day, I got an offer that seemed too good to be true, and it was. After just 3 days at the new job, I realized my new boss had completely lied about the working hours and responsibilities. I went back to my old supermarket, and my former boss welcomed me back without hesitation, even giving me my old position back. This meant my replacement, who I'll call the snake, because that's what he turned out to be, had to go back to his previous role. Initially, the snake and I were actually good friends. We'd go fishing together, our families even vacationed together in Florida one year. We lived close by, so we'd often ride our bikes to work together. Things were great, especially after I got promoted to grocery department manager, making me third in command of the entire store. But then things started getting weird. People began approaching me with strange questions about things I supposedly said. My night crew, who had always been great to work with, suddenly turned hostile. I couldn't figure it out until I started noticing a pattern. The snake was poisoning everyone against me. When I asked one of my night crew members what was going on and why they seemed different lately, they told me they had heard about my supposed comments about them. When I asked what comments they meant, they said I had allegedly called them lazy and threatened to fire half of them. I started working night shifts occasionally to show them who I really was, and things improved. But the snake wasn't done. He got transferred back to frozen foods, and that's when things got interesting. He'd bring in frozen dinners every day, claiming they were from sales representatives. I even caught him switching price labels for his wife. This was back in the 80s before scanners. I kept quiet because I knew reporting him for small stuff would only result in a warning, and he'd make my life hell afterward. But karma had other plans. Another department manager finally got fed up and reported him for the frozen dinner scam. Just as I predicted, he only got a warning. But here's where it gets good. He immediately started telling everyone I was the one who reported him. The department manager who actually did it confronted him, telling him straight up that she was the one who reported him, not me, and that she was going to make sure everyone knew it. The snake came running to me right after. He tried to explain that there had been a misunderstanding, but I just shrugged it off without saying much. Nobody trusted him after that. Later, the department manager told me something interesting. Apparently, the snake had been bitter about my promotions ever since I came back years ago. He thought he deserved them more than me. The story gets better. A new grocery store opened in town, and the snake got a management position there. He spent weeks trying to convince our employees to join him. Nobody did. At his new job, he tried his old tricks, attempting to sabotage the assistant manager. They weren't fooled and fired him after a few weeks. He came crawling back to our store begging for any position, even as a grocery bagger. The store manager asked for my opinion about giving him another chance. I told her that we didn't need the drama and that I wouldn't hire him back if it were my decision. She didn't hire him. The company expanded to several more stores after that, so he missed out on lots of opportunities, all because he couldn't stop trying to sabotage others instead of focusing on his own work. The funny thing is, despite everything that happened back then when I took my position back, he never once talked to me about it during all those times we hung out. He just let it fester while pretending to be my friend. I actually felt bad about that situation, but it wasn't my decision. The store manager insisted on giving me my old position back. In the end, his own actions led to his downfall, and he lost not just his job, but also all future opportunities with a growing company. I've been in the corporate world long enough to know that office politics can get messy, but what happened at my last job was something straight out of a soap opera. Let me tell you how I turned a disappointing situation into the best career move of my life. I've been with the company for 7 years, working my way up from an entry-level position. Training new employees became my unofficial specialty. I even flew overseas to train international teams. With my education degree and 11 years of industry experience, I developed comprehensive training materials that were being used across the entire company. Training wasn't just a job for me, it was my passion. My direct supervisor, let's call him the regional manager, wasn't exactly my biggest fan. He didn't appreciate how I always stood up for the frontline employees, claiming it made me untrustworthy. But I couldn't help it, someone needed to advocate for the people actually doing the work. One day the regional manager created a new position, company trainer. It wasn't an official corporate role, but it would formalize what I'd been doing all along. Naturally, I applied. What I didn't know at the time was that the regional manager was having an affair with one of our colleagues. Instead of conducting interviews, he simply handed the position to his mistress. He didn't even have the guts to tell me himself. He had his subordinate break the news. The subordinate approached me and awkwardly told me that they had decided to go with someone else for the trainer position. When I expressed my shock about there not being any interviews, the subordinate mentioned that the regional manager wanted to FaceTime with me. During the video call, I tried to maintain my composure while asking why he couldn't spare just 25 minutes of his time to interview me, pointing out that it could have been a development opportunity. His response was infuriating. He claimed that every day was an interview and then had the audacity to suggest I was unreliable because I was taking care of my father. My blood boiled. My father has Parkinson's disease, and in 3 years, I'd only taken 2 days off for emergency room visits. 2 days. After ending the call, the subordinate noticed my anger and asked if I was okay. I assured him I was fine, but I made it clear that I planned to report this to Human Resources, find a new job, and wouldn't feel sorry about it. I added that if I ever came back to the company, it would be to take over the regional manager's office. That night, I updated my resume and started applying for jobs. Within weeks, I had an offer that doubled my salary. But I wasn't done yet. During my 2-week notice period, I orchestrated my revenge. First, I gathered 4 other employees who had witnessed or experienced inappropriate behavior from the regional manager. Together, we filed a joint complaint to Human Resources about his affair with our colleague and its impact on workplace dynamics. Then, I systematically removed all my intellectual property from the shared system. Every training document, every slideshow, and the entire 15-day new hire course I created, gone. They were my materials, created using my expertise and education. The company had never bothered to formalize ownership of these documents, so technically they belonged to me. The dominoes fell exactly as I'd planned. The regional manager was escorted off company property and terminated. His mistress, who had 0 training experience, couldn't perform the trainer role without my materials. The position was eventually eliminated entirely. I just submitted my application for the regional manager's old position. The irony isn't lost on me. If he had just given me those 25 minutes for an interview, none of this would have happened. But I guess he has plenty of free time for interviews now. I'm making twice the money working at a company that values my contributions, and my dad's care hasn't suffered one bit. Meanwhile, my old boss lost his job, his reputation, and his office affair, all because he couldn't spare 25 minutes of his precious time.